Hello everyone and welcome to this hands-on tutorial on Docker Compose. In this video, we will be working with two primary components. A front-end built with HTML, CSS and JavaScript and a back-end powered by Node.js. Docker Compose in this scenario will allow us to seamlessly manage these components and run them in isolated containers, while simplifying the orchestration between the services. In this video, we will explore how to set up a basic front-end and back-end architecture, use Docker Compose to run both services in separate containers, define custom networks so that front-end can communicate with the back-end. Now, before we move on, just a quick info, guys. Simplilearn has got DevOps Engineers Master Program. You can become DevOps expert with hands-on projects in collaboration with IBM. In this course, you are going to learn about Docker, Kubernetes, Ansible, Terraform, Prometheus, Jenkins, Microsoft Azure, DevOps methodologies, and many more. So guys, hurry up now and join the course. The course link is mentioned in the description box. So guys, let's get started. So guys, let's start with Docker Compose. So go on the Google and type Docker Compose. So you can see the first link all over here. This is the guide to the official documentation. Just click on this and here we will be navigated to the Docker Compose official documentation. Now, what is Docker Compose, guys? Basically, Docker Compose is a tool for defining and running multi-container applications. So multi-container in this sense can be your front end or a back-end service. Okay. With Docker Compose, you can use a YAML file, typically which is named as dockercompose.yml, to define multiple services, their dependencies, networks, and volumes in a single configuration file. This allows you to spin up multiple interconnected Docker containers with one simple command, making it ideal for environments where you have complex setups, such as microservices or multi-tier applications like web server, database, cache. So if I talk about multiple container, in this scenario, it can be such as we have these two files, which is a backend file and a front-end file. Okay, so this is a sample setup which I have created for you. We are going to learn about it. Now, as you can see all over here, so in our backend file, we'll be having a node project. Okay, so here are our node modules. We'll have a Docker file and a main file called server.js. Then we will have certain dependencies installed all over here. Okay, similarly for front end, we are having a simple index.html file, script.js, then CSS, okay, then the corresponding Docker file. So as I have told you earlier that Docker Compose helps us to spin multiple interconnected Docker containers. So here you have one container and here you have one container. Now the Compose is going to run these two containers. So in this scenario, what I was telling. But our question arises all over here, okay? So why do we use basically Docker Compose? So one of the most important reasons what I found out is that first, you have an easier multi-container management. With Compose, you don't need to manually start and link multiple Docker containers. Compose handles it for you. Then you have the declarative configuration. The entire stack or services, networks, volumes, which are very main concepts of Docker Compose, is declared in single dockercompose.yml file. Then you get the environment consistency. You can ensure that development, testing, and production environments are consistent by using the same configuration. And finally, you get simplified commands, which means that you can start, stop, and manage complex application with just few commands. Now, there are certain key concepts. So if I talk about certain key concepts all over here, so our first concept is services. Okay. So basically services are different containers that make up your application. For example, in this scenario, we have a backend service and a front-end service. It can also be a web service, database service, and cache service. Now, the second most important concept that we have all over here is network. So if I talk about networks, guys, so networks in Docker Compose allows you to define how services are networked together. By default, Docker Compose will set up a bridge network so that your services can communicate with each other using their service names instead of IP addresses. And the third thing that we have all over here is volumes. So if I talk about volume, you can define persistent storage volumes in your Docker Compose.yml file. This is useful for databases or other services that need to persist data across container when your Docker container starts. So these are the certain important concepts, services, networks, and volume, which we'll be seeing in our Docker Compose file. Now, let us set up our workflow. Before that, I want you to have installed Docker Compose on your system. So if you have not installed Docker Compose, go all over here, install. Okay. Suppose you have a Linux system, just click on it. If you have a Mac, then you can click on it. I'm using Windows, so I'll click on this. So now you can install Docker Desktop. So I'm using x86-64 processor, so I'll click all over here. And for the same thing, it requires a WSL, okay? So you can download this also if you don't have in your system. So guys, you can install Docker Desktop on Windows very easily. The first process you can do all over here. While installing, you can just click all over here and it is going to install your Docker Desktop. So I will not do it since I already have it. Or otherwise, you can do it from the command line. So you can see all over here that on your terminal, you can write Docker Desktop installer exe install, then start process, and then you can copy this code. Very easy process, guys. Once you have installed your Docker Desktop, then you can start creating Docker file and Docker Compose file. But always make sure when you are running your script, your Docker engine should be running. Now let us discuss about basic Docker workflow. Okay, so you need to define, first of all, your environment with docker compose.yml file. So the first thing is define your app's environment. The docker compose.yml file. Okay, so this file will describe the services that need to be started again. Example, your front-end service, back-end service, and a database. The Docker images to use or any specific configuration for the services like ports, environment variables, or volume. So these things you have to define in your Docker Compose file. What will be your environment of your app? Now, the second step would be run Docker Compose up to start the services. So basically this command reads the docker compose.yml file and spins up all the services as containers, sets up the network and ensures that they can communicate with each other. And third would be run Docker Compose down to stop and clean up your process. So this is a very basic workflow for the Docker Compose. I hope so you would have got some brief idea regarding this. Now, so let us understand the architecture of our project. So it's a very basic project, guys. In this, we have a backend folder in which I have a server.js. Okay. So if I open this file, so I'm using Express all over here to create something. Suppose what I'm going to do all over here, we will be creating a dashboard, or not a simple dashboard, a simple label where we'll be writing our name. Okay. So here you can see all over here, the port we are using is 4000. Rest, don't focus on these codes, what I have written. You can just ignore this because in this video, we'll be focusing mainly on Docker files. Now, you can see also one thing that we have the package.json. So type cd backend. And after that, just type npmi. So it is going to install all these dependencies. I will share this code all over here with you, the GitHub link. You can copy the repo. Now we have done this. So after this, we will be writing our Docker Compose file. So all over here, you can see the first thing that I'm typing all over here is use Node, okay, version 22.3.0. Because if I go to the terminal, okay, first I will cross check what kind of Node version I'm using. So just type all over here Node. And you can see all over here, it shows 22.3.0. So this is our Node version. So what is the significance of this line? Basically, this line sets up the base image for the Docker container. So Node 22.3.0 refers to the official Node.js image of version 22.3.0 from the Docker Hub, where it downloads all these Node packages. And also, Node Package Manager or NPM will be included in this. Now, the second thing, workdir/app. So basically this line is setting up the working directory inside our container. So /app is our working directory. Docker container is a place where your application files will be copied. So here in this container, all your application files will be copied in this directory called /app. And then there is a copy. So copy package.json and run npm install. So you can see all over here, we have a package.json file. So all of the dependencies which are present all over here, okay, will be downloaded by Docker. Now copy the backend code. So I have added two dots, copy ... What is the significance of these two things? This command copies all the files from the host machine to the current directory, which is /app. Okay. Now the first dot refers to the current directory, okay, which is on your host machine. And the second directory refers to the destination directory inside the container, which is /app. And finally, we are exporting our port, which is expose 3000. Okay. Now we are running it on cmd node server.js. Okay. So this is our official port that we are using. I hope so you have got a bit idea regarding the backend file. Now let us go to the front end file. So we have three files all over here. So this is our index.html. Okay. This is our script.js where I have written certain script, front end script basically, and here is our CSS file. So don't worry about all these files. You can copy from the link which I'll be sharing in the description box. Now the important file that we have to focus on is this. So if I go all over here, so the same thing from Node 22.3.0. So I'm installing Node version of this, okay, from Docker Hub. Then I'm creating a working directory all over here. So this will be our working directory where all the code will be copied. Now similarly, the two dots are here. So I have explained you earlier. This is for the host machine. The address from all the codes will be copied to the destination, which is /app directory. Now here, what I'm doing, guys, I am running run npm install g http server. So what is http server? So basically this will install the http server package globally. So here that's why g flag is given, okay, inside the Docker container. So http server is a simple lightweight http server for serving static files. And here G is installing it globally so that it can be accessible from anywhere within the container. This is necessary because we are using the HTTP server to serve the HTML, CSS and JavaScript file. Then I'm exposing this to port 3001. And finally, I'm serving our CMD HTTP server, then there is a comma, okay, then P, then 3001. So this basically specifies the default command to run when the container starts. So this will run the HTTP server, okay, on the port 3001, and the P option will allow you to specify which port the server will use. So this was all about the Docker file for the backend. Now we have successfully created a Docker file for our backend and for our frontend. Now let us proceed to the docker compose.yml file. You can see all over here we have the version, which is 3, okay. Version 3 is specifying the version of Docker Compose file format being used. In this case, the version is 3, which is widely supported and includes the feature like networking and volume. Each Docker Compose version offers different features and syntax. Version 3 is compatible with Docker Swarm mode and also provides a better support for services and scaling. Next, you see the services block, which defines the individual container or services that Docker Compose will create and run. In this file, there are two services, the front end and the back end. And these services are containers that will run in isolated environments but can communicate through Docker network. So you can see the build is front end, ports we are using 3001. It is depending on the backend and network is app network. Okay, so they will be communicating on app network. Similarly for backend service, the build is backend, port is 4000. Okay, network is app network. Okay, driver is bridge. Pretty much fine. Now finally we have the network section. So in the networks, it defines a custom Docker network that will allow services to communicate with each other. Docker automatically creates default network for services if none is specified. But here we have the custom network, which is app network. Now, what is driver bridge? This is a network type, which is a kind of a bridge network. This is a default network driver for Docker and provides communication between containers within the same network. Now, how these services will be interacting? So the front-end service, which will serve the static file, the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript on the port 3001. Okay. Now on the backend service, it is most likely to run on port 4000. Okay, so that is one thing that we have built all over here. And this scenario, suppose we are building a typical application. So the front end will be hosted on 3001 and the backend will be hosted on 4000. Now let us build our Docker Compose file. Now in order to run this application, what you have to do, guys, go to your root folder, which is demo, okay, and type Docker Compose build. Now after this, what you have to do, guys, just right click all over here and you can see it will start building our application. So it has started building our backend file. Okay, so you can see it has started running. Now it is going to create a container demo backend 1 and demo frontend 1. So you can see our container is created. Now it is starting the HTTP server. Okay, now the version we are using, okay, the version we are using is 14.1.1. The course is disabled all over here. This is security protocol. There are a lot of other options that is available. So you can see the backend server is running on port 4000 and still is on the process of creating. Now, if we navigate to given port, which is 127.3.0, so which I have already opened. So now let's right click all over here. So you can see our application is completely running on this port. Very basic application. So just click your name, something like say Sham, and right click all over here. So it's a basic application and all the data will be stored on the server. Okay, so the main agenda of this project was how we created two services, which was front-end service and the back-end service. And finally, we merged the both services with the help of Docker Compose file. So two separate Docker containers, and with the help of Docker Compose file, we are able to run this. So this was a very basic introduction to Docker Compose. I hope so you would have got a brief idea regarding what Docker Compose does and why it is so much popular tool in today's software development methodology. Now, every job in today's scenario requires you to understand the Docker, Kubernetes, and all these important DevOps tools. So guys, you can watch all these tutorials on Simplilearn's YouTube channel. So guys, that was all for today's video. I hope so you would have enjoyed our today's video on Docker Compose.
Staying ahead in your career requires continuous learning and upskilling. Whether you're a student aiming to learn today's top skills or a working professional looking to advance your career, we've got you covered. Explore our impressive catalog of certification programs in cutting-edge domains, including data science, cloud computing, cybersecurity, AI, machine learning, or digital marketing. Designed in collaboration with leading universities and top corporations and delivered by industry experts, choose any of our programs and set yourself on the path to career success. Click the link in the description to know more.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.